What's up YouTube community, BERNTH here. Thanks for tuning in today and welcome back to another video lesson. Today we will focus on a topic that I'm asked about quite frequently by my students. We will discuss fretboard visualization and note location exercises. It can be very frustrating if you feel completely lost on the neck while you're playing, and actually knowing the notes on the fretboard is the foundation for any kind of music theory knowledge that you want to master. So let's check out the exercises I prepared for you this week. The first part of the exercise is quite simple and you may know about this one already. It's called the Octave Triangle. I will explain this one in detail real quick for everyone that's not familiar with this system, so make sure to stay until the end for the real crazy stuff in case you're here for that. So in case you're not familiar with the Octave Triangle, it's just a visualization of the connected octaves on the low E, D and high E string. As you can see, they form a triangle, and this is very useful in quite a lot of different ways, and I show one of them to you in the second half of the exercise. If you're a bit clueless concerning the notes on the fretboard, this trick will help you a lot once you figure out the notes on the low E string, so that's the starting point. First you should focus on learning the white keys on the piano, then you can move on to the black keys. Us guitar players sadly don't really have any visual indicator of that on the fretboard. To keep the explanation on that very short and simple, once you learned the white keys, you are already done actually, since the black keys are the notes in between the white keys and can either be seen as the lowered note raised by a semitone or the higher note lowered by a semitone. The black key in between the notes C and D, for example, could either be referred to as C sharp, C raised by a semitone, or D flat, D lowered by a semitone. It's the exact same note, but sometimes in music theory it is very relevant if the lower note is raised or the higher note is lowered, especially if you want to focus on the perfect and correct terminology. It might put you in an unprofessional position when you mix them up, even if you're technically talking about the right note. But enough of that for now. We can go deeper into this topic in a different video. Just let me know if music theory is interesting for you. So once you are familiar with all the notes up until the 11th fret on the low E string, they are repeated here in the next octave. So we have E here on the 12th fret once again. That's the first and most basic time when thinking in octaves comes in very handy, since you only have to do half the work here. Once you're comfortable with fretboard visualization on all the strings up until the 11th fret, you can just project your knowledge to the second half of the instrument. But getting there on all the different strings might take a while, and that's why the Octave Triangle is such a great tool. Once you find all the white keys on the low E string, for example, you will also be able to find them on the D string when you think in octaves. So whenever you're not sure about any note you're playing on the D string, for example, you can just double check by playing the octave interval and referring to the low E string. In that case, that would be G. The high E string obviously also has the same notes as the low E string, just in a different octave. So you also save a lot of work here too. So that would be the full octave triangle for G, for example. Another cool trick is thinking of the notes you play starting on the 5th fret of the lower string whenever you move to learning a higher string. In the case of the E and A string pair, we actually already know the notes of the A string. It's the same as if we were starting on the 5th fret of the low E string and then just climb up the neck. So when I'm starting to learn the notes on the A string, I'm just thinking of the notes that I'm playing starting from the 5th fret on the low E string. That's a cool shortcut in this case. The same thing also goes for the A and D string after that, of course. And so on. When I'm learning the D string, I can just think of the notes from the 5th fret on the A string. So that's a great shortcut in the beginning too. So since we usually learn the lower strings first, we can always take advantage of the octave interval to quickly determine the notes on the higher strings whenever we feel lost. For example, with the B string, when I'm not sure about this note, I can think of the octave interval. And even if I'm not sure of this one, I can still think one octave lower. And I have arrived at G once again. In the practical example I was playing after that, I was adding 3 notes of the A minor scale to each position of the octave triangle. So for the notes in general, I was ascending the A minor scale note by note. A, B, C, D, E, F, G. Then here would be A again, the octave. So I was playing up to G, all the notes we have in the A minor scale. But then in the second half of the exercise, I added the next 3 notes of the scale to each note of the octave triangle exercise that I was playing. So not only does this sound pretty cool and original, it also shows you that I can play the scale across the whole neck in different positions with just one horizontal fingering on the E string that I move in octave intervals. This way of actually constructing and composing licks is really interesting, and few players really take advantage of this kind of thinking. You will be very surprised with what you can actually come up when you start composing and improvising in this way. When you practice this one, you might find this exercise a little bit difficult because we are skipping a lot of strings here. That's a slight disadvantage of licks like that, but the extra challenge and string skipping makes them even more unique in my opinion. The biggest factor here without a doubt is keeping the strings from ringing. You don't want to cause any unwanted noise when you transition between the strings like that, for example. That would sound pretty bad, you want it to sound like that. So a common mistake concerning that I see a lot with my students is unintentionally playing a pull-off when you move to the next octave, like that for example. That will sound quite messy, you want a super clean and nice transition. So aside from obviously playing the correct string after the octave jump, this is something that you should really pay attention to. I often use a groove gear fret wrap for licks like that. It's essentially a string dampener that keeps the open strings from ringing. But when you're practicing this exercise, you should also be able to play it without any gadgets, of course. The final example I want to show you, and that's where it gets a little bit crazy, is a pretty fast lick that is also based on this kind of thinking, and it should serve as a more practical example aside from the exercises. Here's that one. So this is a pretty fast and cool sounding one. In reality it's very easy, and there are only 2 super small fingerings you have to memorize to actually play it. It's composed in the basic A minor scale again, and this is fingering number 1. So we're playing hammer-ons, A, B, C, D, E, F, and this is the second fingering. We're just moving up 1 position within the scale, playing B, C, D, E, F, G. Those are the 2 fingerings. So nothing you need to study for hours to memorize. The challenge again is to move these 2 fingerings in 3 different octaves without the listener hearing those transitions and position changes. It should sound like a piano player that's moving those simple sections between different octaves with both hands. You also don't really hear any transitions that way. When there's too much noise or chaos going on with the string switching, or the note spacing is not correct, we are playing triplets here, it won't sound as fluid and nice as the example I recorded. So it's not all about speed once again, accuracy is the main thing that makes licks like that one sound so cool and satisfying. So let me break it down for you really slow. We take this fingering, move it to the next octave, next octave, and that's it. Then we move up to the second fingering we discussed, B, C, D, E, F, G. And we are playing pull-offs right here. And that's the entire phrase, just those 2 small sections repeated in 3 different octaves. Once again the full lick, real slow. And then hope that this short lesson on fretboard visualization and note location was helpful for you and that I could motivate you to work on this super important topic. Please let me know if you have any troubles or questions with this one and if we should discuss this topic in more videos in the future. In the end, please make sure to subscribe to become a part of the community and to stay updated for more free guitar lessons. Leave a like if you learned something new or if you enjoyed this video, and a comment in case you have any question I could answer for you. I will see you in the next lesson. Until then, have fun practicing.